The grand chambers of the Galactic Council were filled with noise, tension, and something unspoken in the air: fear. Representatives from over 200 alien species were present, gathered under the towering spires of Carrion Prime, the capital of the galaxy's oldest alliance. Each species had its own language, its own customs, but today they all spoke in the same tone: anger. At the center of this storm stood one race: humanity. Once welcomed into the council with cautious hope, the humans had done what no one had expected. They grew too fast, reached too far, and refused to stay in the boundaries the council had drawn for them. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage just 100 years ago, but in that short time, they had colonized dozens of systems, built technology no one shared with them, and made alliances with species the council had ignored. They asked questions others were afraid to ask. They challenged rules no one had dared to question in centuries. And worst of all, they had done it all without waiting for permission. Now, the council feared they had let a predator into the flock. A holographic image flickered above the center of the chamber, showing reports of human ships in forbidden systems, Earth's AI technology growing unchecked, and whispers that humans were training other species to rise against the council's authority. Accusations flew like plasma bolts in a firefight, breaking treaties, interfering in primitive worlds, refusing to submit to fleet inspections. At the edge of the chamber, Earth's ambassador, Lena Hart, stood silently. Her uniform was neat, her expression calm, but her eyes held a fire no one could ignore. She listened as ancient voices, full of pride and paranoia, declared her people dangerous, unstable, and untrustworthy. Lena raised her voice only once, and when she did, the room fell silent. "You call us dangerous," she said. "But it was not us who built empires on slavery, who left entire species to die when they were no longer useful. We only did what you were too afraid to do: build something better." The council didn't care. The vote was swift and final. Humanity was to be exiled from all council space. No trade, no travel, no diplomatic ties. Any species found aiding humans would face the same punishment. As the results were announced, Lena did not argue. She did not beg. She simply gave a small, almost unsettling smile. "Thank you," she said quietly, and turned to leave. That smile haunted many council members long after the session ended. As the human delegation returned to their sleek silver vessel, the news spread across the stars. Billions of citizens from countless worlds watched as the proud race of Earth was cast out into the cold unknown. Some cheered, believing a threat had been removed. Others watched in silence, wondering if the council had just made a grave mistake. Aboard the Earth ship, Lena activated a secure channel. Her message, broadcast only once and recorded by every intelligence agency across the galaxy, was clear and calm. "You feared what we might become. Now you'll see what we're capable of." Then, without another word, the ship turned and vanished into hyperspace, heading toward an uncharted region of the galaxy known as the Veiled Expanse, a dark stretch of unexplored space, rich with unknown stars, dangerous anomalies, and no established claim. It was the last place anyone would go willingly. But for humanity, it was the perfect place to disappear and to plant. In the following weeks, rumors spread wildly. Trade vessels that once dealt with Earth's colonies found empty ports and silent satellites. Human outposts had gone dark. No transmissions, no messages, no distress calls. It was as if the entire species had vanished. Some believed they had collapsed under their own ambition. Others claimed the council had secretly wiped them out. But the truth was far stranger and far more dangerous. Behind the veil of silence, humanity was not falling apart. They were building. Without council laws to slow them, without restrictions on AI weapons or expansion, they began to forge something new. They called it the Terran Dominion. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was now the capital of an empire. Human engineers worked alongside alien refugees. Scientists developed new technologies once banned under council law, and soldiers trained in simulations far more advanced than anything the old powers had seen. While the galaxy believed them gone, humanity was turning exile into evolution. A few brave explorers tried to enter the veiled expanse to see what had become of them. Most never returned. The few that did spoke in hushed voices of massive orbital stations, of warships with strange energy signatures, and planets glowing with artificial light in systems that were once dead. One even claimed to see a new flag, a starburst crest of silver and black, flying above a world that had no name on any chart. The Council dismissed these as fantasies, lies made to stir panic. But deep down, many wondered, what if it was true? What if humanity hadn't been defeated but had simply gone beyond them? The fear that had led to exile began to grow again, but now it was too late. They had cast humanity into the stars to weaken them. Instead, they had given them freedom. And in that freedom, humanity found its true strength, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as creators of something entirely new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. And somewhere, in a dark room on a forgotten station, a Council agent watched a new signal flicker to life on her screen, a Terran beacon pulsing softly in the dark, the first sign that Earth was no longer hiding but coming back. 10 years had passed since humanity was exiled by the Galactic Council, and in that time, silence had become their shield. No one had seen a Terran ship, no transmissions were heard, and the name Earth was rarely spoken aloud in council halls. But deep within the darker parts of the galaxy, beyond the mapped lanes and official charts, a quiet force was moving like a shadow. The veiled expanse, once thought too dangerous and empty to be of value, had become the cradle of something vast. The humans had not only survived, they had thrived. In the beginning, they vanished from known space, closing off all routes, jamming signals, and disabling their old colonies. No one knew where they had gone or what they were planning, but soon whispers began to spread through the outer worlds. A merchant ship, blown off course by a gravitational storm, returned shaking with fear, its crew claiming they had seen massive artificial rings around lifeless stars, rings so large they could not have been built by any known species. Another explorer found a planet, once a frozen rock, now blooming with greenery and life, its skies filled with strange metallic birds and orbital platforms, unlike anything in the Council's records. There were also reports of ships, sleek and silent, appearing near struggling outposts, offering food, water, and supplies to forgotten worlds abandoned by the Council. These ships never gave their names, but they bore a silver-black crest shaped like a star bursting outward, a symbol that was becoming both mysterious and feared. The Council ignored these early signs, calling them myths, tricks, or exaggerations by desperate traders. But deep inside their secure chambers, intelligence officers were collecting fragments of a truth they could not explain. One classified report showed advanced human ships deactivating Council drones without firing a single shot, using strange energy fields and stealth drives unknown to current science. Another described a planet protected by an artificial shield that repelled asteroid impacts, as if time itself had been slowed. Slowly, the Council realized that the humans had done in a decade what no other race had done in centuries. They had built an empire in silence. They had colonized barren systems, constructed stations larger than any known fleet, and formed alliances with minor species that had once been ignored or mistreated by the Council. Races like the Volteri, the Exilin, and the Duroc, who had once begged the Council for help, now stood proudly beside Terran officers, protected and empowered. These species had found a home in the Terran Dominion, a growing network of systems that did not follow the Council's rules but offered freedom, stability, and protection in exchange for loyalty and cooperation. What made the Dominion even more dangerous was how little it revealed. Terran ships were fast, quiet, and always prepared to disappear. Their communications were encrypted beyond decryption, and their movements followed no pattern. And yet, their presence was growing. Council stations on the edge of the veiled expanse began to experience strange power outages. Sensor arrays picked up fleeting glimpses of enormous structures floating in deep space, then lost them moments later. One mining colony reported finding strange crates filled with advanced tools and energy cores stamped with a Terran emblem. When they tried to send a message of thanks, the signal bounced back with only one word: grow. That single word haunted Council officials, who had no idea what it meant. Was it a message of hope or a warning? A year later, the Council sent a stealth probe deep into the expanse. It took nearly 6 months to return, and when it did, the footage it carried silenced every voice in the room. The images showed vast cities on artificial platforms, orbiting gas giants and black holes. Thousands of ships moved in perfect formations, guarded by drones with glowing eyes and smooth, silent weapons. Massive reactors pulsed with energy in ways that defied standard models of physics. There were schools, factories, gardens, and research stations built by humans, but filled with life from dozens of species. The final image showed a statue of a human child reaching toward the stars, beneath which were the words, "In exile, we found purpose." The Council panicked. Emergency meetings were called, alliances questioned, and resources pulled to reinforce border systems. But it was already too late. The Terran Dominion had not only grown stronger, they had done so without war. They hadn't fired on Council fleets, hadn't invaded any known world. Instead, they had outbuilt, outsmarted, and outpaced the Council at every turn. In private, some Council leaders admitted what others feared to say aloud. The humans were no longer just a rising power, they were becoming something greater. A quiet revolution had begun, not with guns, but with vision. Not with conquest, but with creation. And yet, no one knew their true intention. Were they preparing for war? Or were they building a new kind of order? The silence made it impossible to know. Then, one day, without warning, a single Terran ship appeared at the edge of a Council system. It did not attack. It simply hovered in high orbit, its hull black and unmarked, except for the starburst crest. After a long pause, it sent one short message: "You chose exile. We chose evolution. We are not returning. We are expanding." Then the ship vanished, leaving behind only the weight of its words. Across the galaxy, fear and curiosity grew like wildfire. Was this a warning, a challenge, or something else entirely? Council fleets scrambled to patrol the border, but they all knew the truth: the Terran Dominion was already everywhere, and no one knew how to stop it. And somewhere in the deep silence of the expanse, a human voice echoed across a command bridge, calm and certain: "Let them watch. Let them wonder. We don't need to announce ourselves. One day, they'll wake up and realize we're already their neighbors. And on that day, the stars will know who we are." Tension filled the cold silence of space as the first Council fleet reached the edge of the veiled expanse, guided by fear, pride, and the belief that they still held control over the galaxy. The mission, announced as a diplomatic patrol, was anything but peaceful. Over 50 ships, including warcruisers and stealth frigates, moved cautiously toward the star system known as Orion 7, where a new colony, believed to be Terran, had recently appeared. From orbit, they saw a glowing world, freshly terraformed, with green forests, clean oceans, and strange cities that shimmered with energy lines. The architecture was unfamiliar, sleek, tall, and breathing with technology that looked alive. There were no defenses visible, no warships in sight, but the Council commanders weren't fools. They knew humanity was never that simple. The fleet began scanning the planet, trying to identify weapon systems or fleet activity, but their systems soon went dark. Every scanner, every radar, every communication signal began to glitch or shut down completely, and before they could react, a single ship appeared out of nowhere. It didn't warp in with noise or flashing light. It simply emerged into view as if it had always been there, hidden in the shadows of space. The ship was large, more than twice the size of the Council's flagship, but it made no move to attack. It sent a transmission, a simple message: "You are trespassing in Dominion space. Leave immediately." The voice was calm, controlled, and unmistakably human. The Council commander, a hardened alien tactician named Verilon Keth, refused to back down. He ordered his ships to hold formation and respond, claiming that the Council had authority in all known regions of space. The message was ignored. Then, without warning, a dozen more Terran ships appeared, forming a perfect arc in front of the Council fleet. They didn't open fire. They didn't threaten. They simply held position, each one brimming with quiet power, their surfaces covered in strange shifting armor and glowing patterns. The Council. Ships prepared for conflict, raising shields and charging weapons. That was the mistake. The moment the first power spike was detected, the Terran ships acted with speed that left no time to think. They moved like a storm fast, silent, and coordinated. In less than 90 seconds, the entire Council fleet was disabled, not destroyed. Their weapons were frozen, engines shut down, and control systems locked. It was not brute force, it was surgical precision. Human ships used advanced electronic warfare, AI-driven targeting, and directed energy pulses that passed through shields like water through glass. Not a single Council soldier was killed. Their ships drifted powerless, surrounded by the quiet formation of the Dominion's fleet. Then came a new voice, this time live from the Terran flagship. The screen on the Council's command deck flickered to reveal High Commander Adrienne Voss, a woman known only by whispers in the upper levels of Council intelligence. Her face was calm, her eyes sharp, and her tone unshaken. She introduced herself without arrogance and offered a single statement: "This is a message, not a war. The Dominion does not seek conquest, but we will not be tested. You fired first. We ended it." She then gave the Council fleet two choices: leave now and report what they had witnessed, or remain and risk complete shutdown of all systems, possibly stranding them forever in the cold of space. Commander Verlan, shaken by the speed and precision of the encounter, reluctantly gave the order to withdraw. As the Council ships turned, power slowly returned to their systems. No ships were followed. No final warning was given. The Terran fleet simply vanished once more, their technology hiding them as easily as shadows in the night. But the damage was done not to the ships, but to the Council's pride. News of the clash could not be hidden. Word spread fast across the galaxy, and for the first time, the public saw what humanity had become: not a scattered, broken people, but a powerful, disciplined force that could neutralize a full battle fleet without firing a deadly shot. Many on the Council demanded retaliation, but others feared pushing further. Some suggested diplomacy, while others called for immediate war. But even among their own ranks, doubts were growing. Minor Council worlds began to question their loyalty. A few started sending quiet messages to the Terran Dominion, curious about their systems, their trade, and their promises. Meanwhile, on Earth, now the heart of the Dominion, a gathering of leaders reviewed the incident. Adrienne Voss stood before a council of her own, not of politicians, but of scientists, engineers, and representatives from a dozen species that had found safety under the Dominion's wings. They didn't cheer victory. They analyzed it. They studied every second, looking not for praise, but for improvement. They didn't want a war, but they were prepared for one. Their philosophy was clear: peace through strength, unity through purpose, progress through freedom. That made them dangerous to the Council, because it was working. In silence, they had grown from the ashes of exile into an empire built not by dominance, but by design. Each colony they founded was self-sustaining, protected by AI defense grids and rapid response fleets. Each ally they took in was given rights, resources, and a voice. The Dominion wasn't just another power. It was a new idea, one that frightened the old rulers of the galaxy. In the weeks that followed the first clash, sightings of Terran ships increased near Council space. They never attacked, never lingered, but they were seen helping stranded freighters, repairing damaged satellites, and delivering aid to colonies the Council had long ignored. Their presence became a message: we are here. We are watching. We are not what you expected. And still, no one knew how far their reach had spread. Council sensors continued to fail near the veiled expanse. Trade ships began to disappear, only to return weeks later full of new goods and stories of vast floating cities and strange technologies. Some called it propaganda. Others called it the future. But all agreed on one thing: the galaxy was changing. And at the center of it, humanity had returned not as servants, not as rebels, but as architects of something far greater. And though no war had begun, everyone knew that the first clash was only the beginning. Tensions across the galaxy were no longer whispers, they were thunder waiting to strike. After the silent humiliation of their fleet in the Orion 7 system, the Galactic Council could not hide the truth any longer. The Terran Dominion had become more than just a threat. It was a rising storm the old powers could no longer ignore. The council chambers, once filled with calm debates and slow decisions, now boiled with fear, division, and quiet desperation. Some members wanted to open talks, to try diplomacy before it was too late, while others, especially the war-hardened Valeri and the proud Kelnor, demanded immediate action. They believed that if they didn't strike now, they would soon kneel before a human empire greater than anything the galaxy had ever known. Behind closed doors, secret alliances formed. Funds were poured into experimental weapon projects, ancient war machines were pulled from forgotten vaults, and covert missions were launched toward Dominion space. But no plan seemed to go untouched. Somehow, the Terran Dominion always seemed one step ahead. Spy drones were disabled mid-flight, encrypted files were wiped clean before extraction, and every move the Council made felt like it was being watched from the shadows. Still, one Council world, desperate to prove strength, broke the unspoken line first. On the isolated border planet of Resser Prime, a Terran research outpost had quietly grown beside the native Kaltari population. The Dominion had brought medicine, clean water, and weather control systems that had transformed the dying desert world into a place of hope. No weapons, no soldiers, just engineers and scientists helping rebuild what others had abandoned. But Resser Prime was rich in lithium neutrals, a rare mineral needed for high-energy starship cores, and the Council saw the outpost as a challenge. A Kelnor battle group entered the system under the claim of inspection, but their orders were clear: remove the humans, take the planet, send a message. What followed was the spark the entire galaxy feared. Without warning, the Council fleet bombarded the research site from orbit. Dozens of civilians, human and Kaltari, were killed in seconds. No warning, no chance to respond. Fires raged, and the skies turned red. The Council declared it an unfortunate incident, a miscommunication, and urged calm, but the galaxy saw it for what it was: an attack on the heart of the Dominion's vision. Within hours, a Terran diplomatic vessel arrived in Council space, carrying the wounded and the dead. It did not threaten, it did not accuse, but it carried with it the shattered remains of children's learning tablets, melted tools, and a single burned Dominion flag. No words were spoken by its crew, just a transmission that read, "You drew first blood. We remember." The Council expected an invasion. They fortified their borders, called back fleets, and waited for war. But for days, nothing happened. The silence returned thick, heavy, unnatural. Then, without fanfare or violence, Dominion ships began to appear across independent systems, bringing aid, rebuilding colonies, and offering protection. They did not speak of revenge. They spoke of unity, of justice, and of standing against cruelty. Refugees flooded into Dominion space. Several neutral systems, long ignored by the Council, openly pledged loyalty to the Terran flag, claiming they trusted the humans more than the rulers who had forgotten them. Even members of the Council began to turn. A respected senator from the aquatic world Thessa gave a broadcast declaring she would not longer support a council that let innocent blood spill in fear. Her message went viral across the Holonets. The Terrans did not demand war. They demanded dignity, and we denied it. While debates raged, the Dominion acted with quiet precision. Resser Prime was not avenged with weapons, but with a wall. Within a week, a Dyson tier shield was constructed around the planet, locking it in a protective shell of light, cutting off the Council's access, and surrounding it with humanitarian drones. The planet's population, now mostly Kaltari, asked to join the Dominion fully, declaring they would no longer recognize Council rule. Their message was echoed by 3 more systems within days. The Council began to fracture from within. Protests erupted on key worlds. Some military officers refused to follow orders. Trade routes broke as entire corporations switched to Dominion-friendly networks. And through it all, the humans never launched a single offensive. They didn't have to. They were changing the galaxy without lifting a weapon. And that was the most terrifying part. But still, the fear that gripped the Council forced them toward one last desperate choice. In a secure vault beneath the Council's central command, A project long thought abandoned was activated. Codenamed Project Ashfall, it was a relic of the ancient wars, a weapon built to erase entire star systems using controlled black hole detonations. It had never been used, never even tested, but now the Council believed it might be their only way to stop what they feared was an unstoppable rise. The plan was brutal: target a Dominion system deep in their territory, strike hard, and then deny involvement. No warning, no trace, just a dark silence and a message of fear. But this time, the Terran Dominion was ready. Unknown to the Council, one of their own had switched sides. A high-ranking officer, disillusioned by the growing cruelty and lies, leaked the plan to Dominion intelligence. And before the weapon could even be armed, it vanished. No explosion, no damage, just a clean, perfect theft. The entire station holding Project Ashfall was found drifting, its systems shut down, its crew asleep in cryo without memory of what had happened. In its place, the Dominion left a simple beacon floating in space. It broadcasted a single sentence on repeat in every known language: "We will not become what you fear, but we will not allow what you have become." The message sent shockwaves across the stars. The breaking point had come and gone, and the Council was no longer in control. The galaxy now stood at a crossroads. One path led to war, chaos, and collapse. The other, uncertain and unfamiliar, followed a new order rising from the edge of exile. In the silence that followed, the choice belonged not to the rulers, but to the people, traders, workers, refugees, and dreamers who had begun to believe in a different kind of future. And as the stars turned, one thing became clear: humanity had not only survived, they had become the center of a new galaxy in the making. The galaxy had changed, not with fire, but with silence, not through invasion, but with vision, and at the heart of it all stood humanity, no longer the outcasts they once were, but the architects of a rising order that stretched across stars like veins of light. After the failed attack, the missing superweapon, and the exposure of the Council's lies, the old systems began to fall apart. One by one, the outer worlds stopped answering the Council's calls. Some declared neutrality, others demanded reforms, but most looked to the Terran Dominion not with fear, but with hope. What began as whispers grew into movements. Planets began flying Terran banners next to their own. Treaties were rewritten, and old oaths were broken. The Council, once proud and united, had become a fractured voice in an age that no longer belonged to them. On Earth, now called Terra Prime, the Dominion Council held its first open congress with over 40 species attending in person, many of them former council members who now sought inclusion in the new age. The meeting hall was nothing like the cold, towering halls of the old Galactic Council. It was open, made of clean metals and living stone, with sunlight streaming through a transparent ceiling that looked out over the blue sky of a reborn Earth. Adrienne Voss, now titled Imperator of the Dominion, stood at the center, not as a dictator, but as a symbol of survival, of unity, and of patience. She spoke not of vengeance or war, but of duty. "Empires fall when they forget who they serve," she said. "We rise because we remember." Her words were simple, but they echoed in the hearts of those present because they were true. The Dominion had not risen on blood, but on purpose. The humans had taken their exile and forged something stronger than